16. Everyone can see it. Sam was an even-tempered man. He knew all his customers, if not by name, then by face. No matter who you were, if you came into Sam's Italian restaurant, Angelo's, he would remember you the next time and even pick up where the last conversation left off. "How's Ricky doing with T-ball?" he'd say to the Bridges. Or, "How's your daughter doing at that new job?" he'd ask the Murdochs. To Mr. Clemson, whose house had been flooded by faulty plumbing, "Did you get that fixture repaired yet? I know a guy." There was no host or hostess at Angelo's. Sam greeted every guest every night. Angelo's was a family place, not corporate, but owned by a family. Sam's family. Started by his parents, who had immigrated from Syria, Aaron and Rosarita Albaz. He was Jewish, and she was Muslim. But with their olive skin and her name, most people took them to be Italian. Funny that. Most people even thought Angelo was their family surname. People often called Sam and his brother, Roy, the cook, Sam and Roy Angelo. America, the place of reinvention. It was a Friday night in May. There were all kinds of graduations that night. Tables 1, 8, and 11 were reserved for parties of 15, 5, and 7, respectively. This, of course, would be in addition to the other regular customers that would be expected on a Friday night. "Big parties tonight," Sam said to Felikech, the waitress. Really, the only waitress. It wasn't a big restaurant. And with Sam working the door, along with the runners, bussers, and bartender, they made it work, pooling tips. They all made more, Sam noticed, ever since he had hired Felikech. Maybe it was just the restaurant coming into its own. But maybe it was her. Sam had known he would hire her the moment she walked in the door, the very first day he had put an ad in the paper for new servers. She had stepped inside, the soft light filtering through the curtains like a white cloud at her back. She'd had on slacks and a collared shirt, but the scarf she had looped around her neck gave her all the grace of a woman moving in royal robes. Grace. That was what he thought of her when she had moved inside from the door, smooth as a brush stroke on a canvas, her shape curving and tapered all at once. Her bangles had rung, sort of like chimes, when she'd reached her hand out to shake his. She'd said her name and explained to him that it was Ethiopian. "Who's coming in?" she asked, preparing the checks in her black server book. Sam's mind came back to the present. Felikech was in the starched button-down shirt and long black skirt she wore when waiting tables. Her hair was pulled back, but she still wore her bangles. He was glad for that. Her eyes caught him in their pull over her book of checks. Luminous. That was what one of the customers had once called them. "Jackson's on table 11 with a party of 7. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson, 3 grandparents, 2 children. Their son is graduating from Lake Forest High School tonight," Sam said, laconic. He pointed to their table with his head. "Table 8 is the Colemans. They'll need a booster seat for the youngest kid. They're celebrating Sally's birthday. She's 40 or something, but don't ask." "Of course not," Felikech said in that way that let him know she'd had everything long worked out in her head already. 3 years of working together did that. She could read his moods better than most, and he her tones, spoken in that melodic accent of hers that the customers so loved. "And the big party of 15 people is at table 1, the Schroeders. Big dinner. Their daughter's graduating from Robinson High, valedictorian." "Vicky! She's valedictorian?" Felikech said, clapping her hands. "That's wonderful. I will have to congratulate her." "Yep. Impressive girl. Varsity swim team, all kinds of National Honor Society awards. Next year she's going to Yale. Real go-getter." Sam wondered if he would ever have children to make him so proud, but that had not been in the cards for him. In many ways, the restaurant was his child. "Do we have a cake for them?" Felikech asked. It was just like her to think of that. She would probably go buy one for them if he said no. "I'm sure they will bring their own. Don't forget to charge them a cutting fee." "A what?" Felikech asked, her hands closing around the order book and stuffing it into the pocket of her apron. "Cake cutting fee. People just can't bring their own food into a restaurant. You have to charge them. We'll take the cake in the back, slice it up, and serve it. It's usually $25, Sam said. You are being serious. I am, Sam said. I refuse, Feliketch said in a tone that told him he had already lost the battle. Why is that? It's standard in every restaurant, Sam said, tilting his head to the side. I don't care if it is standard. The Schroders are good, regular customers. They tip generously. I am not going to charge them for slicing a cake. They will expect it. But then they can be pleasantly surprised, she said. She was being assertive and was on the edge of annoyance with him. The Jacksons are here, she said, nodding at the door. Sam took his cue and went to greet them. The Jacksons were walking in the front door, two grandparents leading the way. The grandmother was round, stooped, and leaning hard on a cane. Mrs. Jackson held her arm with all the familiarity of a daughter. Mrs. Jackson was followed by her son, stooping through the door in a royal blue graduation gown. Nice gown, Jake. My mom made me wear it in here, Jake said with a grimace. Hi, Sam, Jake's mother said. Hello, Mrs. Jackson, he said, kissing her on the cheek. This is my mother, Sophia, she said. My father, Anthony. It's a pleasure. Sam shook hands with Anthony and kissed Sophia. The old lady flushed and giggled at the attention. Sam winked at her husband, who seemed happy that his wife was happy. Mr. Jackson came in the door with his mother, who was a bit younger than Sophia and Anthony. Sam kissed her cheek and shook hands with him. The Jacksons' younger son lingered at the back. He was smaller than his brother Jake and lanky. Britt was his name. Sam suspected he played soccer, but he wasn't sure enough to mention it. Sam showed the family to their seats and told them that Feliketch would be right with them. Oh, wait until you meet Feliketch, Mr. Jackson said to his in-laws as they took their seats. She's Sam's wife. Sam chuckled as he helped Sophia enter her chair. Well, that would be something. Don't go spreading rumors about my employees. Mr. Jackson looked up, the surprise on his face sincere. What? But I thought, all these years I just assumed. Doug, Mrs. Jackson said, waving her hand at him. Look at his finger. Sam doesn't have a wedding ring. Oh, I guess you're right, Doug Jackson said, scratching his head. Jake seemed relieved that someone was now more embarrassed than he was. His brother Britt snickered as Jake whispered something to him. Sam didn't want his Mr. Jackson to feel uncomfortable, so he lightened the mood. No, I'm a bachelor. You know me, a real party animal with my Argyle sweaters and sensible loafers. I think I got this pair at a garage sale just last week. They all laughed. The moment had been diffused. Jake, in fact, stood up for Sam. But Sam, you're totally smooth, like all mafioso. Mafioso? Sam repeated. Jake's father leaned close to Sam and elbowed him, speaking in a low voice. Well, Sam, if you had not considered Feliketch, maybe you should. He followed with a wink. A look from his wife silenced him. Good evening, Doug, Debbie, Britt. How are you? Feliketch said, appearing at the edge of the table with menus. Feliketch, we were just speaking to Sam about you, Mr. Jackson said. Oh? She said, pivoting and handing the menus out to the grandparents, women first. You must be Doug and Debbie's parents. It is nice to meet you. Feliketch never missed a beat. She turned to Jake. Jake, congratulations on graduating. Thanks, Feliketch, Jake smiled. Sam left to get a water pitcher. They were in good hands. Something was wrong. By the noise and flow of the crowd, Sam knew they were already into the evening rush. He checked his watch. It was 6:15. The Jacksons were supposed to arrive after the Schroders. The Schroders had been due at 6. Sam looked at the big table they had set for them. 15 glasses, 15 plates, 75 pieces of silverware, not counting butter knives. The butter knives made 90. All that space would be taken up, all those dishes would be filled. Big check. The Schroders weren't usually late. They were good customers. Maybe the reservation was taken down wrong. Maybe it was 6:15, not 6. When Feliketch came alongside him to add up a bill from a foretop, he said, Please, when you get a chance, will you light the candles at the Schroders' table? Sure, Sam. A young couple, college students, came in and stood at the front. First-timers. Girl was lean like a track runner. The young man was athletic-looking too. Lacrosse, football, maybe both. Sam shook his hand and led them to their table with a large, friendly swoop of his arm. Feliketch nodded her head to signal she had seen them seated. Sam made a sign with his fingers for her to card them. She winked. She had it covered. After that, a man wearing slacks and a dress shirt with the tie loosened entered. He had a Newsweek under his arm. "Table for one, please." "Sure, this way," Sam said, ushering him to a two-top in the corner. "It's Edison, right?" "Yes," Mr. Edison said. "I'm surprised you remembered." "I try to remember everyone who comes in. You were here a while back with your wife, right?" "Yes," Mr. Edison said, sitting down as Sam took away the extra place setting and poured him some water. "She's out of town, and I didn't feel like cooking tonight." That's fine, sir. Let us do the cooking for you." "It's funny," he said as Sam laid the napkin over his lap. "All these years being married, I don't really know what to do with myself in the evenings when she's not around. I guess it's not like working with your wife." Sam paused. "Working with my wife?" Mr. Edison nodded towards Feliketch. "That lovely woman who was waitressing. Isn't she—" No, no. She's an employee." "Oh, sorry. I guess it's just the family vibe this place has." "I'm sure that's it," Sam said. After that, Harold arrived. Harold was a regular. He took a seat at the bar and ordered his usual Crown and 7-Up. The bartender, Daniel, was new, just graduated from college with a degree in English. He had grown up in the subdivision across the road and had been coming in for years with his parents. To Sam, Daniel was something of a hybrid, half employee, half nephew. Now he was trying to decide on grad school or the Peace Corps, neither of which seemed like a good use of a college education to Sam. Daniel slid Harold his drink. Sam noticed how his eyes continued to follow Feliketch as she passed by, mouthing her order of 1 Sauvignon Blanc and 1 Pinot Grigio for table 14. "Hey, eyes up here," Sam said, snapping his fingers. "Sorry, she's just sort of spellbinding, you know?" "She's more than 10 years older than you." Daniel shrugged. It was Herodotus who said that the most beautiful women in the world were from Ethiopia. Sam had not gone to college, a secret he rarely revealed to his employees. "Herodo what?" "Herodotus. He was a Greek historian. He wrote that 4,000 years ago. Can you imagine? People had been raving about the beauty of Ethiopians since then." "Huh," Sam said. He remembered what Jake Jackson had called him. "Daniel, what does mafioso mean?" "It's like the mafia. You know, a cool character. Smooth, generous, powerful. Like the Godfather. Why?" "Jake Jackson said I was mafioso." "Oh, he's totally right, Sam. It's why everyone loves coming in here and being greeted by you. They feel special, like you are taking good care of them. You're the cool guy." Sam looked to him to see if he was being sarcastic, but Daniel seemed sincere. Sam would have to think about that. "Just keep pouring drinks, college boy. And keep your eyes on the customers, not our waitresses. I don't need some romantic drama in here." Daniel smiled. "A bit worried I'll move in on your game, Sam?" Sam felt his hands tighten around the edge of the bar. "What do you mean?" Daniel shrugged. Don't ask me. I just pour drinks." The older couple in the corner still didn't have menus. Sam made an opening and closing motion with his palms and pointed at them. Jose, the busboy, saw him and took them some menus. It was 6:30. "Did the Schroders call and say they would be late?" Feliketch asked, coming out of the swinging door of the kitchen after dropping off an order to Roy in the back. "No, but we'll hold the table a little longer. They're good customers, like you said." The candles on the Schroders' table were still burning. Sam wanted them burning when the Schroders came in, but if they were lit any longer they would burn down too low. The O'Hares were leaving. They always came early, 5:30-ish, to avoid the big crowds. Sam waved them out. Mr. O'Hare took some peppermints from the basket by the door. A middle-aged couple entered the front. They were very well dressed, must have come directly from work. The woman in a red suit had red lipstick, red nails, and brown hair. The red dress, matching her lips and nails, looked strange. Sam couldn't decide if it was attractive or not. Just strange. Her husband was tall, with dishwater blonde hair and a yellow tie. Sam sat them at table 13 and carried menus over, because he knew everyone else was already busy. A couple was sitting at the bar chatting with Daniel, who was listening with a big smile. The kid had good teeth, Sam noted. It was the benefit of having parents who could afford orthodontics. People like Daniel found him easy to talk to. Sam heard the man at the bar order his 4th Coors Light. Felikech passed with a basket of rolls and tapped Sam's arm, directing his attention to the front door. The Colemans had arrived. Roger Coleman was the pastor of the local Baptist church. It was traditionally an African-American church, but Roger's sermons had been drawing in crowds of all colors. Pastor Roger had invited Sam more than once for service, but Sam usually attended the Coptic service on Sundays. Sam was not particularly religious, his parents having fled the religious strife of the Middle East and the schisms of their own families, to where they could choose to be anything. They had chosen, well, nothing. Sam and Roy had grown up thinking Americans believed in the Force, after seeing the popularity of Star Wars. Roy married a Catholic woman, so they went to Mass. Sam had been attending the Coptic one ever since Felikech had invited him. "Sam, good to see you, man," Roger said, hugging him. "You too," Sam said. He hugged Mrs. Coleman. "Happy birthday, Sally," he said. "Oh, Sam, how did you remember?" He kissed Sally Coleman, patted the youngest children, Teresa and Jonathan, on their heads. He asked them if they were going to be good tonight and handed them boxes of crayons and paper placemats to color on. He liked the Coleman kids. They were always well behaved. They didn't make too much noise or run between the tables. They had never spilled anything. Sam shook hands with Dave Coleman, their teenage son, and put his arm around him on the way to their table. Felikech was waiting there and had already had set out the booster chair for Teresa. She and Sally exchanged hugs and kissed on both cheeks. "How's life, Sam?" Dave asked. Sam had noted that "how's life" was the cool greeting these days among teenagers. "Can't complain." "Looks busy." "Yeah." "Got a big party coming in?" Dave was looking at the Schroeder's empty table. "Yes, Vicky Schroeder. She's at your high school, right?" "Yeah, valedictorian. Looks like they're a little late," Dave said. He must have noticed the candles burning down low. Perceptive kid, Sam thought. "Yeah, almost 45 minutes now that I think about it." "Traffic is pretty bad out there. There's a big accident on Route 50, Dave said. "Well, that must have them delayed. Enjoy your dinner, young man." There were more people at the door, but all the tables were filled. Felikech came up alongside Sam. "Should we take the Schroeder's table apart?" She was holding her server book with both hands. She had long, elegant fingers. He knew if she was asking, it was probably all right to break the tables up. She wouldn't have asked unless they had waited more than enough time. But Sam, for once, was not sure. "Not yet. Dave Coleman said traffic is bad on 50. We should blow the candles out, though." "Got it," she said, and made a swift turn back onto the floor. Sam told the new set of customers that came in that it would be a 20-minute wait. They looked at the full restaurant, then their eyes landed on the empty table for 15. They said they'd be back another time. Other customers came in. Some waited, some did not. Sam looked outside. Maybe he would see the Schroeders. They'd probably be in a big hurry by now, crossing the parking lot in a big crowd of relatives, members from every generation. He didn't see them. The rush was in full swing. Sam brought out a basket of rolls because Jose was too busy running food. The tray of food resting on his palm formed a big T with his forearm. Sam poured water to help Fatima, the bus girl, because she was cleaning tables. Sam checked on the young athletic couple, the college students on the two-top. They were both drinking soda, so Felikech had carded them. Good. Sam poured some water for them, made some easy small talk, got them laughing, then noticed his brother Roy peering at him through the swinging door of the kitchen. Sam excused himself and floated over to him. "What's up?" Sam asked. "We're almost out of peppercorn vinaigrette." "None in the fridge?" "Nope." "All right, I'll get some from the catering van. It's too busy to send anyone." On the way to the door, Sam saw that Mr. Sanders was signing his credit card receipt. "Mr. Sanders, thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for bringing your lovely wife." Oh, we're not leaving yet. We're still nursing some coffee. I have to run to our van to get some dressing. By the time I get back, you'll probably be long gone, off to bigger and better things. Oh, Sam, Angelo's is the bigger and better thing, Mrs. Sanders said. Sam could have hugged her right then. Her words kept his mood buoyed as he stepped off the curb into the lane outside the restaurant. The van was on the far side of the parking lot, close to the main road and the parkway. Sam had done this on purpose. With Angelo's Italian restaurant and catering services plastered on the side, it was free advertising, a billboard he didn't even need to pay for. The parking lot was packed. Angelo's and the other restaurants, the Thai place, the pizza parlor, the ice cream shop, were doing good business. 2 ambulances went past on the highway, their sirens blaring. Sam turned his body sideways so he could walk between 2 cars' side view mirrors. Such passages were becoming slightly more narrow for him these days. He checked the front of his shirt and brushed off some greenish-yellow pollen. This time of year, it stuck to everything. He got to the van. He climbed in on the passenger side because the driver's side door was parked too close to the shrubs planted near the curb. He found a bottle of vinaigrette in the back. He also grabbed some extra bread baskets. He sat down on the passenger seat just for a moment. He felt a drop of sweat run down his cheek. It itched, but he did nothing. It picked up speed as it went around his chin and down his neck. He stopped feeling it when it hit his collar. He imagined the moisture spreading out into the fibers of the shirt. Something was on his mind, but he had pushed it away in the flow of customers and the turning of tables. It hid just at the edge of his consciousness for a moment before he remembered it with a start. Felicech. Why was it that 3 people that night alone had said something about them? But there wasn't a them. They were colleagues. He was her boss, of all things. He'd never use that position for something untoward, especially not for Felicech. He'd have words with any man or boss of hers who would try something like that. He felt a rush of protectiveness for her, followed quickly by a sense of affection that he tried to ignore. He did know he looked forward each day to coming into work because she would be there. Sundays, her day off, he had always liked least. But by attending the Coptic service, he had found a way of seeing her. It felt strange to go a day without seeing her. They'd meet after the Coptic service for the lunch with other members of the church. Sam had met Felicech's family, her mother, her brothers. The 2 of them often were the last to leave the church hall. But he had always just stayed to help clean up the tables. That was what he was used to doing. He worked in a restaurant, after all. But she had stayed all those times, too. He wondered why. A helicopter passed low overhead. A news chopper or maybe a medevac? Going to that accident on 50. He realized he had been daydreaming for too long. He had to get back to the restaurant. Personal thoughts were for personal time. He slammed the van door and began walking at a clip. On the way, he expected to see the Schroeders, finally arriving with their guests in a long procession. He pictured their daughter Vicky in a white graduation gown, rushing in with armfuls of presents and flowers. Maybe they had meant to come in at 7 o'clock? Sam passed between 2 cars. A family of 5 was walking into the restaurant. Sam switched the baskets and bottles around in his hands. He wouldn't reach them in time to greet them. Felicech would do it for him, maybe even better than he could. What was the word that customer had used? Luminous. Daniel had called her what? Spellbinding. Sam would have to go over to the table and make small talk with a family of 5 when he got back to make up for not greeting them. Funny, what Jake Jackson and Daniel had said about him being cool, of all things. Was that how people saw him? He didn't mind, just had never taken something like that for granted. Sam entered, the 15 top for the Schroeders waiting still. The candles were blown out. It was already a $1,500 loss for the night easy. What happened to the Schroeders? Daniel asked when Sam got behind the bar. Stood us up, I guess. They never called? Never. That's not like them. Daniel turned to make Harold another crown and 7-Up. Sam didn't say a thing. He couldn't speak. Felicech and Fatima were bringing out Mrs. Coleman's birthday cake. Felicech's face lit in the warm glow of the candles. Spellbinding. Sam walked over to the light dimmer and turned down the lights. Felikech turned in place, waving her arms, and soon the whole restaurant clapped and sang along to Happy Birthday. It was like a family, he thought. Or maybe like a symphony. Felikech the conductor. Sam noticed that while he was out, the Stevensons had arrived. They were a retired, silver-haired couple. They were very good friends of Sam's, some of his oldest customers. He brought them a plate of bruschetta on the house. "Have some no-shows?" Mr. Stevenson said. He pointed to the Schroeder table. Apparently they thought no one else would want those seats," Sam said, bitter. "Wow, Sam! You angry? I've never seen you angry. You're always so cool and laid back." "Yeah, that's what people have been saying." He chuckled as he shook the folds out of the napkins and set them across the Stevensons' laps. "It's just a rotten thing to do. Ends up costing us," he said, looking at the Schroeder table. "Some places would charge them, you know," Mr. Stevenson said. "They take your credit card number when you call now, and if you don't come in, they charge you for a meal anyway. That's a good idea. A very good idea. I should have thought of it." Sam went to the bar and took 2 menus, handing them to the Stevensons. They thanked him and ordered half a carafe of Chianti. Sam gave the order to Daniel. Then he and Jose pulled apart the Schroeder's table and reset them. The candles were burned too long. They would not be able to use them again. A waste. Sam walked over to the bar, threw away the candles, and retrieved the carafe for the Stevensons. He stared across the room at the 3 empty tables they had pulled apart, with 5 settings each, 5 plates, 5 glasses, 75 pieces of silverware, 90 with the butter knives. It wasn't one big table now, but it was unlikely they would turn them all before they closed. He really could charge them. Maybe he had an old receipt in the back. Of course he did. "I can't believe they didn't show up for a reservation of 15 people. You think everything is all right?" Daniel said, changing the coffee filters. "They're just rich. They think they can walk all over anyone," Sam said, squeezing a wine cork in his hand. "People are just lousy," Sam said. Just lousy. The Jacksons were leaving. Sam waved goodbye to them. He hadn't the energy to walk over and say good luck to Jake. Poor Jake had finally taken off his graduation robe. Then Sam thought better of it and walked over. He shook Jake's hand. The rest of the Jacksons were leaving. He walked out with them. "Mafioso, you say?" Sam said, ribbing Jake. "Totally, man." Jake slapped his shoulder. Sam laughed and turned to his parents. "Try to avoid Route 50. Apparently there's a big accident there." "Thanks, Sam," Mr. Jackson said. Sam went back inside. The tables were messy with sticky plates, half-drunk drinks, empty butter wrappers, and crumpled napkins. But all of the disorder meant money flowing into the register. All the tables had been used. All except for the 3 by the windows. 15 seats worth. Not even a single turn on them for the rush. Sam's face felt hot. He tugged at his collar. He would charge the Schroeders, Sam decided. He would charge them right now. It would help him feel less angry. He walked back to his office, opened the door and switched on the light. He rolled open the drawer of the filing cabinet and looked through the credit card receipts for the past 6 months. He found that the Schroeders had been there twice just last month. They were good customers, but not tonight. He copied down their credit card number. Their phone number was there too. He would call them, but he decided he didn't want to talk to them. He would just charge them. This would be Angelo's new policy. He took a spare menu he kept by his desk for phone orders and found the most expensive dish, $14, then the least expensive, at $7. He averaged them. That included the price of salad. He was sure everyone would have ordered a salad. He multiplied by 15 for every person that would have been there. He decided not to include appetizers. He thought this was very generous on his part. Then he calculated soft drinks and then wine. They probably would have had red wine. Everyone drank red wine now that doctors said it was healthy. They would have had champagne. Of course they would. It was graduation. Their daughter was valedictorian. But she was also underaged, so they would have had non-alcoholic sparkling apple cider too. Couldn't forget the cake cutting charge. $25. He calculated the tip. Felikech averaged around 22%. Not bad, but for a 15 top she would have deserved 25. Sam. Felikech was at the door of his office, as if his very thoughts had conjured her. The house phone was in her hands. They were trembling. Felikech, are you all right? No. Sam, it's the Schroders. Oh, did they finally call? Don't tell me they were nasty to you, he said, ready to include appetizers for every setting if that were the case. No, Sam. Vicky, Mr. and Mrs. Schroeder. They're all dead. They died in a car accident. The one on Route 50. He dropped the check he had been holding as if it had burned his fingertips. But it refused to disappear. Instead, it remained on the center of his desk, an accusation. Dead? But I just spoke to them this morning. Sam, I'm sorry, Felikech said. Sam stood up. He didn't want her to be worried for him. He didn't deserve that. But he was worried for her. He knew her, her nature. He knew she was hurting. He went around his desk but stopped short of her. As a boss, as the owner of the restaurant, he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do next. She stood, staring at him, her hands clasped over her heart. Her elbows were pulled into her sides. She looked up into his face, small and vulnerable. Roy burst through the kitchen door, stopping beside Felikech. Fella, you gonna run these orders? Cool it, Roy, Sam said. The Schroders are dead. What? That was why they didn't call, he said, one hand on his hip, the other pinching his forehead, the pads of his thumb and index finger pressing on his temples. Felikech wiped away a tear. Roy put an arm around her. She sniffed and put her head on Roy's shoulder. Sam wondered why he had not just done that. Why had he hesitated? I was just talking to them this morning, Sam said as the noise of the kitchen, the bar, the dining room seemed to recede. Roy shook his head, stepping back to the kitchen. The entrees would not wait. Just sort of reminds you, Roy said. Cherish the people you love while you have them. He stopped in the doorway of the kitchen. His fingers splayed on the swinging door just below the window. Love you, brother. Yeah, you too. Roy's eyes darted from Sam to Felikech, then back to Sam again. Felikech was not looking at Roy. She was looking at Sam. Sam swallowed, standing close to her in the doorway. Felikech wiped her eyes and started to turn. I'll get those entrees for Roy. Wait, Sam finally said. Wait, Felikech. There is something I need to say to you.